You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing listeners. How are you? Thanks for joining me. I wanted to answer a listener's question because when I read it, my mama heart really felt for this listener, and I know that she's not alone. A lot of you are wondering the same thing. Before I begin, however, I wanted to remind you, if you were listening to this Thursday morning, it is still not too late to join the Dating from Within workshop. That starts tonight, Thursday. We meet Friday and we meet Saturday. If you cannot make all 3 nights, that's okay, because guess what? They're all recorded. I think your experience is going to be deeper and more enhanced if you can make it live to all 3 nights of the workshop. But if not, it's okay. I gotcha. They are recorded. You will still get access to the workbook and all of the information that I have to share for those of you that are trying to navigate this experience or scared to death to navigate this experience. The most important reason why I created this workshop is to help you connect back towards yourself, to help you know what needs to be healed, how to heal before you can move forward, what dating yourself looks like really, and how to continue to date yourself from here on out. Like you've heard me say before, I still have to practice dating myself, even though I'm married, because that is how I stay connected to myself. That is how I stay in tune with myself. Because one of the things that happened for me and my experience in having a life-saving divorce is I feel like I lost myself in that past relationship. I feel like I lost who I was, and it was such a slow process. Like I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it happening, just like I didn't see all of the abuse and I didn't see all of the betrayal all at once. It was like this slow drip of poison. I don't ever want to do that again. One of the promises that I made to myself after my divorce was that I would date me, I would stay connected to me, that I would never get into another relationship again until I really loved who I was. I want to show you how to do that and why this will not only help you heal from the past, stay present today, and give you hope for the future, whatever that looks like. Head over to the show notes or amiewoolsey.com. Go over to Dating from Within workshop. You're going to spend over 6 hours with me for the price of 1 hour with me. It is a deal. I wanted to make this absolutely affordable to get the most information and support as possible for those of you navigating this piece. All right, now back to the listener's question today that I really want to tackle. The question was, when my kids ask if I'm okay and I'm not, what do I tell them? I'm going to add another question in there to today's episode. This is such a heartfelt question. And I think, honestly, the best way I think to approach this is with honesty wrapped in age-appropriate reassurance. The other question that I see go along with this one most often is not only when my kids are asking if I'm okay and I'm not okay, if I'm okay and things aren't okay, what do I tell them? But I want to also address the question, what do I tell my kids when they ask details about the divorce or when they ask things about the other parent? I think this can be a really tricky topic. And I will just tell you this, I personally don't think there is a right or wrong answer. My approach to this, especially when clients come and have this question and we're deep diving into their particular situation, one of the things that I am confident about doing with my client is making sure that they are in tune with their intuition, with their sensitivity, and inviting them to trust what they know about their child, because you mamas know your kids better than anybody. I just feel like it would be ludicrous for me to tell all of you, to give an answer, because each of your situations are unique. Each of your children are unique. Their needs are specific. And honestly, in a nutshell, I think the more you recognize what that need from your child specifically is, you will be able to better answer that. And I believe that you have the answer to that question as their mamas. So first and foremost, like I said, I really think taking into consideration every one of your children, their age, their stage, and what they've been exposed to in terms of the dynamics in your relationship and the dynamics through the divorce. What have they seen? What have they been told by the other parent? I remember my kids would come home from being with the other parent, and it was all kinds of, well, dad says this, dad says this, dad says this, dad says this. They would even say things like, when he was briefly remarried the first time, the kids would come back and say, well, she says this, says this, and she says this. And all the feels, first of all the feels, I just want to validate when that's part of your situation. And it's so easy to want to correct all of it and jump into that conversation and negate everything that they were saying. That's not true. That's not true. This is what's really going on, blah, 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 and get into that back and forth, he said, she said with your children. I will recommend considering not doing that. I don't see that being very helpful psychologically for the children. Every single one of your children are in different spaces and places. There were times when one of my children really did have a concern. They really were being told something that was false, and they were genuinely asking me a question. Here's my go-to for when your kids are asking you questions about the other parent or about the relationship, the divorce, right? Those types of things. My go-to is ask them at least 2 questions before you answer their question. Always answer their question with a couple questions. Here's why. And I've learned this the hard way, is that oftentimes when we get the question from our child, we've got all these experiences that we're having with the other partner and the divorce that we're not telling our children, right? Like maybe we're in the middle of filling out paperwork and we're going through the financials, or maybe we just got a call from our lawyer and you're being told that your soon-to-be ex is digging his heels in or withholding information. Like, right? You've got so many things on your plate and so much information that you're gathering and you're dealing with that your child doesn't know. So your child comes, asks you a question, and your brain is pulling up all of this information that you're holding on to and that you're experiencing with your ex through the divorce. It can be really easy and tempting to answer the question based on what you're experiencing rather than answering the question based on what your child is experiencing. That is why asking them follow-up questions will help you get more into their brain and understand where they're coming from so that you can give them the answer that they need rather than the answer that you need to give. Does that make sense? So this can be challenging. Again, it takes intention. It takes that ability to slow down and get in your child's world, so to speak, in their brain. When you ask them questions, you get to see even more what's going on in their brain. I remember another time where I had no idea what was being told to my child. I had no idea the conversation that this one particular child had just had with their father. They asked me a question. I believed that I knew where she was coming from. I gave an answer. And it actually was like I misread the whole situation. And I gave them an answer that really wasn't helpful, made them feel a little bit more pulled in the middle, actually gave them more questions because I wasn't really answering the question. So, like I said, I learned the hard way. And I am really grateful in years past, the therapist that my children were seeing, she really, really helps me through a lot of these specifics, a lot of these tools to help navigate and be able to give my children what they need and not make them be stuck in the middle between 2 parents, right? That's really the key. I think that's really the biggest concern that I think a lot of you have is I don't want my child to feel like they're being pulled in the middle, or I don't want my child to know a lot of the things that that the other parent has done. I don't want, I want them to have a relationship with them. I also know that a lot of you are struggling with that right there because you do see a lot of the unhealthy and the destructive behaviors that your that you've experienced, and you don't want your child to experience that. It can be really tempting to want to protect your child from the other parent. And in the long run, you're doing more harm than good, unfortunately, unless there is definite abuse happening, right, that you need to call CPS around or file for sole custody, it unfortunately can be really, really hard to prove when bringing situations to court. My child comes home in the same clothes that I sent him. They're not being washed. In the eyes of the court, that is not abuse. The more things that you are chalking up like that and bringing to court, believing that you're going to get more custody, trying to keep your kids away from the other parent because of these types of things. In fact, like, I remember being so frustrated asking my kids, like, "Did you even eat a vegetable while you were away? Like, did anything green enter your body this last week?" And those can be really, really frustrating. And I remember feeling like, "Oh my gosh, they're not being taken care of. They're getting all of this sugar, all of this junk." Maybe your child's being allowed to play on devices nonstop, and you don't have that rule in your house. All of these things that are like, I don't want to diminish your value system around, but when the other parent doesn't share the same value system, it can be really easy to light you up on fire and want to fight about it. And I am just telling you right now, fighting about those kinds of things in court is not going to get you anywhere. And unfortunately, I have seen all too many times that actually work against the parent that is pulling up all of these different scenarios that really, again, in the eyes of the court, are not considered abusive. It is different parenting styles, and it's not fair, y'all. It is not fair. It is so frustrating. I want to validate the heck out of that. I also want to set you up for success, and I want you to set your relationship up with your child for success. Because again, when we're nitpicking these things that are different in the sense of how I run my home versus how my ex runs his home, how what I believe and what he believes, what I value and what he values. At one point, I had to just accept that we are different. We are going to see things different, value things different, and parent differently. When I was so frustrated and trying to control what the other parent was doing, it took away my ability and my power to focus on how I showed up with my children and how I parented. So I needed to make a really big shift. And that part of that was radically accepting that I don't have control over what happens at the other parent's house. Like I said, not fair, really frustrating. You can feel all the feels. And if you want to have an empowered divorce and if you want to show up for your children in an empowered way, you have to let go of what's happening in the other home and bring all of your energy, all of your ability as a mom in your space, in your home when you have the children on your time. That is where you will have the most influence and the most power to influence your children, is when you are focused on what you can control. So going back to the question of when my kids are asking questions about about the other parent, about the divorce, it is so important to ask follow-up questions because you don't know where the child is at and where they're really coming from. You can be frustrated with all of these things that are happening that you're dealing with silently that can inadvertently be dumped on your child when that's really not what they're needing to know or wanting to know. The other thing that I will mention here, I just remembered this. I had one particular child that really convinced me for a while that they needed to know all the things and that it was really, really important to them that they knew all the things. This one particular child did see more than any of the other children in terms of abusive, destructive behavior. This child knew a little bit more of what the other parent was struggling with in terms of addiction. So they did have a little more context, which made it believable for me. And quite honestly, I, at that particular point in my life, kind of wanted them to know. I wanted my kids to know so that they could see the reality, right? I was still dealing with reality fragmentation, this reality collapse. I was still trying to wrap my head around what the hell just happened, who is this person really? I was a little further ahead in that journey than my children, but kind of wanted to bring my children up to speed, right? And give them all the things. Again, this is where I'm really grateful for my therapist who did such a good job counseling me and helping me to slow that down and reminding me that it wasn't going to be helpful It was hard to trust that, I'll be honest. I'm glad that for the most part I did. I didn't do it perfect. Ask my kids, right? I did not do it perfect. Powers in their repair for sure. But I remember wanting to divulge all of the answers to this child's questions because it helped validate my reality that I was still grappling with. I believed it would help me to make even more sense and understand my reality a little bit more if I could talk about it with my child and we could be on the same page with it, right? Like, okay, I'm not crazy, right? Because when you are experiencing this life-saving divorce, when you're experiencing betrayal trauma, you've had your reality collapse. This person that you are now divorcing, the abusive behaviors and destructive behaviors might have very well escalated. This person's even more and more further and further away from who you ever believed that they were. So your ability to grapple with the reality of who this person is cannot depend on what your children know or don't know about that person. It can't. Number one, it won't help. It doesn't help. And you will be bringing them into a world that in a reality that their brains and bodies most likely are not ready for. The biggest thing you can do for your children in how to answer their questions is, like I said, see where they're really coming from, give them facts, right? Give them very, very basic facts. Try not to go overboard. Keep checking in with them. What do you think about what I just said? And then hear their answer. They might say, okay, great, never mind. I don't want to know anymore. It might be a follow-up question, which therefore you ask another follow-up question, because again, you really want to understand what is it that they're really needing to know from this question. They might not really need the answer to that question. Most of the time, what our children need is to know that they are safe, that they are lovable, and that their basic needs are going to be met. I'm going to say that again because this is so important, y'all. When your children ask questions about the divorce, about you, the other parent, about what's going on, when they make comments, observations, and they want to know more information, most of the time, what's underneath, right? The layers underneath this onion, what they're really wanting and needing primitively to know, am I safe, emotionally, physically safe? Will my basic needs be met? Will I have food? Will I have water? If you have little older kids, 9 and older, will I be able to see my friends? Will I be able to play at the same playground? Will I be able to go to the same school? Will I be okay? Am I still loved? Am I still lovable? When you can see it from that perspective, when you can really get to the root of what the need from your child is and whatever the question that they're asking is, you will be able to give them the answer that they really need. If your child is asking you, are you okay? And you're not okay, be honest. That is one thing that I will offer and highly recommend, is that you don't lie to your child. This doesn't mean you give them all of the details. Again, what your child is most likely sensing is your emotions and the state that you are in. If you are not in your window of tolerance and you're more in that hypervigilant state, anxious or dorsal vagal, right? Very shut down, closed off, depressed, they are going to assess that. And then what immediately, this is very, again, primitive attachment theory, what they're going to wonder at that point is, am I okay? That is another thing that I had to realize and recognize, learn the hard way, is that when my child is asking, am I okay? They really don't care if I'm okay. What they're really needing to know is if they're okay. Because if I'm okay, they're okay. One way that you can answer this is to, again, validate that they are okay. They are safe. They are loved. Their needs will be met. No matter what is going on in my body or in my brain, that is exactly where my brain goes to when my child asks this question. In fact, the other day, it doesn't matter how old, the other day, my 17-year-old walks into the house and I was in the kitchen and I was not okay. He starts talking to me and immediately his little, beep, 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 attachment beepers went off. And he was literally in the middle of a conversation telling me about something that happened. And he stops mid-sentence and he looks at me and he goes, what's up? What's going on? You okay? Like a 17-year-old boy would do. I'll be honest, part of me wanted to say, yeah, I'm fine, right? Because I didn't want him to know what was really going on. It actually was about his father, but I didn't want to talk about it, right? So there was that part of me that was tempted to be like, yeah, I'm fine, keep talking. But I've learned enough along the way to know that this child picked up on my energy, my body. Maybe I wasn't as attentive. Maybe I wasn't responding like I usually respond. He picked up on it. This is attachment. Okay. He picked up on it. He noticed and he's like, hey, what's up? What's going on? You okay? And I said, actually, I'm not, but I will be. I want to continue to hear what you have to say. That's just an example of me answering honestly without giving details. So when I say answer honestly and don't lie, this is what I'm talking about, not tell them all the things. Okay. What we're doing here, like everything I'm talking about, is emotional intelligence. We are managing our emotions, right? Not dumping them on our children. We are validating our child's emotions. We are helping them to feel their own sense of safety by not gaslighting them. That is one of the things my mama guilt, had to work through a lot of mama guilt because I know that I gaslit the heck out of my kids, my two olders in my previous marriage when I wasn't saying anything to anybody about what was going on in my relationship. The situation was drastically different in my first marriage when my child would approach me in the kitchen, Mom, are you okay? Yep, I'm fine. I'm good. Yep, all's well. What that did to my two olders was bring a lot of that confusion of what's happening in their own body. They were then trying to regulate to something that was not real. It did a number on their systems. It did a number on attachment, right? Thank goodness for repair. And I'm so grateful that they're open to those types of repairs because I really did think that I was helping. I was thinking at the time that my kids just need to know that I'm fine. The kids need honesty. We can give that to them by saying, you know what? You're really perceptive. You're probably picking up on some things. You're correct. I will be okay. Right at that point, it's letting our kids know that we know how to manage our own emotions. They don't need to manage them. That was another really big thing with a couple of my kiddos is that because I wasn't being honest and there was a discord in their own bodies, there was a couple of my children that then went into this role of needing to manage mom's emotions and being really hyper attuned and vigilant to mom's emotions. And so what we don't want that for our children, we want them to only be responsible for their own. We can do that by being honest about our own feelings, learning that our feelings are ours, their feelings are theirs. We create them, right? I create my own emotions and allowing my child to know that they're in charge of their emotions. We really can have a huge influence on how our children learn emotional intelligence. And being honest about our emotions first is a great place to start. So, age appropriate answers, honesty without details. Consider what your child really needs from the question that they're asking. They're asking questions about their father. Tell me what is making you ask this question. What's really coming up for you? What are you feeling? What are you noticing? How can I really support you and help you? What do you need from me? These are all really good questions that you can ask before jumping into an answer, because most likely the answer is going to come from what you want your child to know rather than what your child really needs to know. More than anything, reassure your children of your strength and your love. Kids, like I said earlier, just often need to know that they're still in a safe place. This is that attachment seeking. So something like, no matter what, I'm always here for you. And I'm so glad that we can talk about our feelings together. It's okay to feel sad sometimes, and it's okay to ask for help. Those are some examples of what you can say and how you can respond to your child's questions, what they're really needing to know. Sometimes just pausing when your child is asking you this question and looking them in the eyes, if they're little, getting down on their level, and just validate what they are sensing and reassure them what they're sensing is right. Children are little Buddhas. What a lot of us as adults got kicked out of us was our ability to trust our sense and intuition because we may have been told that our parents are fine. Again, all in the name of love, all trying to protect us from feeling negative emotion. But your kids are going to feel it. They're going to sense it. They're going to be aware of it. So we want to validate that in them for sure. Depending on the age and stage of your child, maybe giving them some physical connection, especially if they seem worried, giving them that comfort by inviting them to snuggle for a few minutes, inviting them for a hug. Maybe let's draw a picture, do something fun together. Sometimes just reassuring that connection and that safe attachment can be exactly what your child is really needing at that time. The last thing I will just say is that when your child, going back to this listener's question, if I'm not okay and my child asks me if I'm okay, what do I say? It's answer honestly and then maybe some follow-up questions. So that might sound like, you know what? I'm actually not okay. I will be because I know how to handle my emotions, but tell me what you're picking up on. What are you noticing? And let the conversation go from there. And then make the conversation about your child, meaning what they're noticing and how that makes them feel. And this is where you can teach them emotional intelligence, right? Well, and teach them about what's in their control bubble because they can't control you. They can't control the divorce. They can't control the other parent. They can't control the situation. When children feel that sense of being out of control, they may often feel like they need to control the environment or the parent that they're with. It's why oftentimes they become really hyper attuned to the emotions that you're feeling. So, another quick suggestion is that when your child is in this state, if they're asking you these questions, especially if you have a child that's doing this often, it also could really be coming from a place where they are feeling very out of control. Again, another amazing tool that my children's therapist gave me years ago was around this as well, is giving your children as much control as possible when you're going through divorce. This can look like letting all of them have a turn to control the radio in the car or the playlist, right? Who's in charge of the Spotify playlist on the way to the store? Who's in charge of the Spotify playlist on the way back from the store? Something simple like that gives them a sense of control, letting them wear what they want, do their hair how they want, even eat what they want. My stepchild, for a period of time, we were in this stage, right? They have a new stepmom. They're feeling very out of control, letting them have more control. I remember this little guy was so obsessed with mac and cheese. It's all he wanted was mac and cheese, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like, okay, whatever. Let go of that control, Amie. It's not going to kill him. It won't last forever. So, allowing your child to have more control in safe ways will really help them when they are feeling that sense of out of control while you're navigating a life saving divorce. The reality of it is real. It's intense, it's hard. And like I was saying before, you're going to be dealing with a lot of unfair situations and circumstances as you're navigating this divorce. Your kids are going to pick up on that. Giving them more to control in their little bubbles that's safe is a really great coping skill and a really great way to show up and create that safety for your child. If you are having a hard time managing your own emotions, then I strongly recommend you getting that support so that you have someone who gets it, someone who understands, and someone who can really allow you to feel all of the things when you're navigating a life-saving divorce. My hope for you is that you can take some of these ideas, some of these things I shared today, and make necessary shifts, trusting your own mama tuition and your own knowing that you know your kids better than anybody. Shift into having an empowered divorce. These principles is going to set them up for life better than trying to protect them from all of the negative emotions of life, because you can't. So shift into having an empowered stance here as well, where you will empower your children by teaching them how to manage their emotions, by managing yours. If you need more support in this area, please feel free to reach out and book a consultation. I know this can be tricky, and all of you have such different specific situations that it might take having someone help see where your brain is freaking out or where your brain is really worried and how we can shift into more of an empowered state. When you do, you can have a space In fact, if you haven't listened to my episode that I did a couple years ago on creating a healing home, it really aligns with what I'm talking about today. So you can go check out that episode. Focusing on what you can control in your space, in your home with your children gives you so much more power, y'all. So much more than worrying about what's going on in the other parent's space and even bringing into your space all of the drama that might be going on in the other parent's space. Be very mindful and protective of what's in your space because that is what you have the power to create and cultivate because you can. Take care, everybody.